Hello, I'm Daniela. In today's video, we're going to finish our Stitch the Season 2022 fabric book. Now it's a long video where I'm going to show you how we bind the book, add the cover, finish decorating the back of the book as well as the front, and assemble the entire project. This is where the entire workshop comes together to create the final product. Now there'll be another video in the series, just a wrap-up video, telling you some things that I enjoyed about the process and some of your comments as well, so be sure to leave those below. But for right now, let's get started finishing this wonderful fabric book. So now to bind our book, I have the components here. I have all the pages and the cover, along with the back piece that I'm just going to pin for now. We'll come back to this later on in the video. I also have an additional piece that I want to use for the spine. This is purely decorational purposes. So I just chose a piece of fabric that coordinated with my book, that was taller than my book and pretty wide. I would say this is about 5 inches wide. But to start with, we're going to work on the pages here. So these are all the pages, and if I take them out, you'll just see I have one long line of pages, and I still have my little pins in between each page, and that was my guide for when I was creating it. If you have anything in the pockets, this is probably a good time to remove them, but you'll need them again when we make the cover, just to get the proper size. So now you want to take your time and fold your book in the appropriate way so that your cover and your back page, when it wraps around, will open up like this. You don't want your front page to be like this, that's all I mean. So the front page, when you have everything nicely folded, you'll see the reverse side, and then I can open it accordingly. So now I can start taking out these pins. So I'll remove all my pins, but I'm going to need them, so I'm going to hang on to them. Now from here, you're going to want a thread and a needle, and you can use whatever thread you want. You can use colored embroidery floss. I like to use a neutral embroidery floss, the same color as my main background. But you can vary this. You don't have to use just one color. So again, you'll make sure your pages are lying in the formation that you want and that are nice and neat. And then we're just going to flip the book to the center, and more or less the center. There's probably no even center. So I'll start from here, and I have my page folded the way I want it. So now I'm just going to pin that page together. And I'm just going to work on one page at a time. So now I'm going to take my thread and a long needle here, and here's the thread that I'm using, this pearl cotton, number 8. And I'm going to start on one side here. I'm going to come up through the interior of both pages, and I'm going to just sew basically a top stitch up and down, catching both sides of the page. And so I'll do this on the bottom and the top. I don't have to sew this part, at least not yet. I can decide if I want to do that later. So I'll just create those stitches, and you can do a whip stitch, a blanket stitch, any type of stitch you want. I'm just choosing to do a top stitch. So I'll stitch the length of this page, knot it off, and then stitch the top as well. Again, I'm bringing it right to the spine. So I'm stitching. And this is holding my page together so that there's no wrong side or raw side showing of my work. And again, you can make these stitches as large or as small as you'd like. I think the key is just to try and keep them even. You can even go back and do a decorative whip stitch if you want, or a blanket stitch. But I like the stitch just like this. And then when I get really close to the edge, I'm just going to make sure that I finish off my stitches. So they go right to that base, right of the page, right creating that spine. Now I like to start with the center of my book. You don't have to. You could start with any part of your book that you want. But after I create that last stitch, I'm going to come out through the wrong side of my fabric and just knot it off. Just make a little double knot. And I'll do the same thing up top here. I have my little pin here just to hold it shut, and then I'll come back. After I've stitched from here to here, that page will be a lot more sturdy. So I'll stitch here and we'll continue on. So now that I've stitched on the bottom and the top of my page is nice and secure. I can take off this pin because I no longer need it. If I feel like the page is flimsy, I can stitch right up and down here. But for now, I don't find that I need that. So now what I have to do is go through all my other pages and do the same thing, so that when I have my book stitched, I'll have just the pages and there'll be no raw side. I'll no longer be able to open it up. So I'm going to stitch down on all the pages remaining. So that should be 2 more pages. And then we'll come back and continue our work. So I've stitched all the pages together. So now if I was to hold my book from the top, you can see my 3 double-sided pages and then my page for inside the cover and inside the back. Now a tip is to stitch from the outside in when you're binding your pages together, because this way when you get to the end here you can knot off your thread on the inside. So now that I'm happy with the way this is coming, the meat of my book is all done here, I can trim any loose threads that remain. Again, if you wanted to whip stitch or blanket stitch the edging, or even add a piece of folded fabric, now's the time to do that. I'm going to jump right into getting the cover ready though. So for the cover, I have the cover with the front page that we stitched, the ornaments here, and I have this little swatch of fabric that I made for the back page. The back page still needs to be embellished, so I'll do that, but I'm going to set this aside just for now. The other thing I like to do is have a spine for my book. So I have this fabric here, and it's strictly aesthetic. On the sample book, let me move these out of the way so you can see them better, it looks just like this. So it's just a cute little touch. It's not necessary. You already have that fabric from your book if you're following this tutorial. So before we start with the spine, we have to measure our fabric. Now this is the point where you take your actual page, that's going to be the front and the back, and you open it. And then I'm going to take my book and I'm going to set it on top. And I want it to be exactly where I want it to be. So this will take a little bit of trial and error. I like it to overlap ever so slightly. Now I'm not worried about the rest of the book. Right now I'm just focused on the cover. So once I think I have that in position, I'll take my book and fold it as if I'm really using it. I'm going to move it over just a little bit more because I do like that additional gap here. And I'll just play around. So I'm happy with this. I'm going to pin it in place, and again I'm going to use my safety pin to do that. And I like to pin it folded like this. I don't want the book open. And then I'm going to try and figure out how much fabric I need for the back, and then I'm going to cut this down. So this is the part that is really the trial and error, the part where you really want to make it right. So for here, what I like to do is take any of the items that I have that I want to stuff in my pocket, and I can either just put it in the pocket or just on that page, because this is just a guide to see how thick this has to be. So I'm pushing this in. That's just a little bit of bulk. Doesn't have to be perfect, but I am trying to get it realistic. So right about here, I'll take my pen and mark it. Again, I mark it just a little bit long because I can always shave it down. So I have it here, 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 and then when it opens, I have it right to the spot that I want. So now I'm going to cut right here. And again, just to be on the safe side, I'm going to cut a little wider. This will vary by each book and how much you fill it. If I was to do this entire book of stitching and not adding additional fabric, well, the width of the book would be completely different. So that's coming out quite nicely. So now I can take this apart, and before I set my pages aside, I'm just going to set my book down and make just a light sketch with my pen here so I know approximately the widest part I want the back page to be. Now I can set my pages aside, and I have my front of my book and my back. So here's where I want to finish the back. So I'm going to stitch this down on my book, and I think I'm going to stitch the season here as well. So I'll just write that in. And if I want to add any additional embellishments, buttons or charms, additional pieces of fabric, now's the time to do that. I think I want to cover this top here. I want to just mask it a little bit. So I'll go through my fabric stash and find some fabric and use that just to cover the top and the bottom. Now I like the neutral fabric, so I think I'm going to do that. I'll cut some of this fabric down, fold it on itself, and use that as a trim. And I'll do that on the top and the bottom, and I'll consider doing it on the side as well. And then I'll just top stitch this in and embroider my words. And then we'll come back and add the spine and finish our book. And this is very exciting. So I completed my back cover. I added the Stitch the Season. I added these little trims on the edge just to finish off the top and the bottom. And then for the side, all I did was pull that fabric over. I moved it over a little and folded it over. It just has a nice edge. There's no edge on the front page, and that's fine. If I wanted to put an edge, I could do that. I could take some more of this fabric and do that. But I'm happy with the way this looks. I'm actually very, very happy with the way this looks. So I'm going to show you the back. You have the front page here and all the stitches, and then the back page and all the stitches. Now I stitched around the side here to hold my piece down, my little back panel, but I also stitched a few stitches in this neutral color just to hold down and give a little dimension to my little pine bow here. So now it's time to work on the spine here. I have my fabric that I like. So now I'm going to fold it and cut it so it fits this area here. And I want it to come over here and cover a little bit of my back page. And then the same thing in the front here, but not quite as much. So I'm happy with the way the back page looks. I'm just going to take my iron and press it just so I have a starting point. Try and line up the print on this fabric here, this little buffalo check, and I'll just press that seam. And then again, I test it out, and a lot of this, because there's not a set size, is trial and error. So that's a nice placement. I'm very happy with that placement. And now I have to figure out where I want this. And I think I want it right at this other fold. I'm going to press this along this line of the print, which makes it easier when you have a print. If you don't have a print, you just mark it up and do your pressing till you get the right size. So now I have this little strip here. If I had ribbon, I could use ribbon just as easily, and I wouldn't have to worry about the edges. And if you don't mind the rough edges, you can use the rough edges as well. So I'm lining it up with just a slight overlap on both sides, and I like the way that looks. So I'm lining it up with a slight overlap on both the cover and the back, and I'm pleased with that. I'm going to fold over the top here, give that just a quick little press. The heat will train the fabric to have that nice fold. I'm going to pin it in place and work my way down. Now over here, I know I need it to cover this stitching that I did just to hold it in place. So I have to move it just slightly. And that's the whole point of this, is it's working it to make it really nice and exact to what I want. So I'll just press it. I'll take my pin hold it in place, and then work on the bottom seam as well. And I'll just press that in place. I'll pin it, and then I'll take my thread, and I'm going to use the black thread again. And I'm going to top stitch all the way around, just like that. I'm going to use small stitches. And I'll just come up on the edge, make a little stitch, and continue this all the way around until my spine is in place. So I finished attaching the spine here. And so this is the flat piece that will be the cover as well as the back. And here's how it looks on the inside. This is the last time I'll see that because I'm now going to attach it to my book. We're at the home stretch. I'll remove any of the filler just so I have less things to wrestle with. And I'll just put my book pages down on my cover. Again, I want to make sure it's in the right spot because if you just set it down, it won't be. So I'll start with the cover, and I'm going to hold that in place. Hold my pages up and just verify that that works, and it does. So now I'm just going to pin my cover in place and stitch all the way around that cover. I'm not going to worry about the spine or the back page. So the book isn't crooked, and you want to stitch right to the very edge of that page. So it'll ultimately look like that. So I'm going to start up top here. I'm using just neutral thread. And I'm going to start right where I want that page to attach. You can always go back in and add more stitches, but it's just easier to start right where you want it. Now, because I'm working with the front of the book as well, I'm going to keep my eye on the front here just to see where the stitches go. I don't think I want the stitches on top of this red rickrack. So I want all my stitches to go through the top of the book as well as that page. So once I come close to that rickrack, I'll just stitch around it. Just like this. And now I'll continue to stitch around this page. So now I've stitched all the way around the cover and the back page, and it's attached quite well. You can see if I take the book from the top view, you can see exactly how it's attached. Now I didn't feel the need to go down this seam here. If you would like to, go right ahead, but when this is attached, it will be pretty secure, particularly if you make sure that you go all the length that you want. So now I'm just going to stitch the other side here, and again I verify my placement. I don't worry about the center of the book, the spine. I just make sure I have my placement correct here. I pin it in position, and again I want to pin it all the way around. Now on this scarf, it sticks out a little. I can either cut that off or leave it, and I happen to like it, so I'm going to leave it, but I'm going to stitch underneath it. And then I just make sure that I press my back page. Again, I'm not worried about the spine. The spine is untethered at this point, and that's totally fine. I just want to get a nice solid attachment for my back page here. There will be this little gap in the spine, and that's what we want. Again, you want to stitch right to the end of your page, and then there'll be that little gap. So I'll stitch it and show you exactly what the book looks like. Now this is the process that takes a while, so there's no need to rush it, but we're at the tail end of creating this book. So I finished attaching that final page, and my book is all stitched and complete. And that's how it looks from a bird's eye view. The front, all the pages, the back, and if I splay it open. it folds just like this, and it has that give to make that book. So that's my completed book. Now I'm going to have one more video where I come back, review all the pages in the book with you, and then just kind of give you some ideas on things that worked for me, the things I liked, the things I didn't like, and some surprises along the way. So that's my entire process for finishing the fabric book. Now it does take a little time. It's not a single afternoon project for me anyways, but I really enjoyed the process and I love the end result. There's so many variations that you can do and see with all the prompts, your fabrics, your stitches, and anything goes. And that's what I really like about this project. Now we have a Facebook group. It's a private group where anybody in the group will see your comments and see your posts. So it's a really nice environment to post your work. And I'm going to leave it up year round. We'll add to it next season. I'm thinking 12 months away for the next Stitch the Season workshop. But for now, this is going to stay up. So don't feel you have to finish your project immediately. Of course, that's totally up to you. But I would really love to see your work. There's so many talented seamstresses and stitchers out there, and I just enjoy the process of seeing your work, seeing how your pages developed. Even if you only post one page or one section of your book, that's really exciting for everybody to see. We all have different ideas and different styles, and so seeing all the different ones really is special and really exciting. I want to thank you for making this workshop a success. If you've enjoyed this video and this series, please give it a thumbs up and comment below. Thanks for joining me today.